Yesterday, I wrote a script for a video about how to not be lonely in New York. It was supposed to be about 6-7 minutes long, and I spent over an hour trying to record it. Every time I would go to record it, I would find myself being like, oh, Hale, make sure you add a little bit of your personality back in. I mean, I had just written it and I wrote it in my own tone, but yet I couldn't read it in my own tone. And at some point, after struggling for quite some time, I realized that I was making a video on how to not be lonely in New York while I was lonely in New York. And I particularly struggled because yesterday would have been my grandma's birthday. And so just kind of went down that rabbit hole. But I'm ultimately so grateful that I did write an entire script on how to not be lonely in New York. And I'm grateful that I forced myself to read that script over and over again for over an hour, because the script was essentially the past 3 years of my life since I've lived here, and all of the different ways that various strangers have come into my life and helped brighten it in some way, shape, or form. Whether that person is still in my life today or if they were just in for an episode or two, it's irrelevant. I included both, and I think of all those experiences so fondly. And I don't know, I realized that even though I was feeling lonely in that moment or during that day, it gave me hope that it was just temporary, because look at all these other great examples of times when I wasn't feeling lonely, and times when my heart and my life was so full of joy. And I knew that it was just one bad day. It wasn't a bad life or even a bad week. It was just one day where things were just not meshing well. And even when I thought about the video and I thought about, oh, well, what if it tanks? I know for a fact that after I upload this, there will at least be a couple views. There will be my father and likely his girlfriend, because they tend to watch it on 2 different devices to make sure that I get the count for both views. And I know at some point when my sister is back from vacation, she will also watch this. And I also know that my best friend will watch it and comment on it. And so even if it does flop, it doesn't really matter, because I know that those most important to me are still going to be there supporting me. And they're not even physically here in New York, but I can still feel their positive presence in my life. I have things going on this weekend. I spent all of today on the phone, half of which was just with strangers that just ended up becoming friends throughout the phone call. And the moral of the story is that if you're lonely in New York, you don't have to be. You can go through a phase. You can throw your pity party if you need to. Definitely been there, but you don't have to be lonely. There's so much to do. You can join a networking group. If you don't want to pay the monthly membership, go to a meetup. There are Facebook groups. I made a friend off of Bumble BFF. And most importantly, don't listen to this if you are a child, but most importantly, just talk to strangers. I mean, there are so many amazing ways that I've made friends out of strangers. One of my good friends here, I met on a train platform while we were both coming back from an Abraham Hicks conference. We ended up talking for like the 1.5-hour train ride home. I once went to a last-minute Amy Schumer show because I wanted to go and no one was available, so I was like, screw it. I ended up getting paired with, I ended up sitting across the table from a woman who actually grew up 20 minutes from me back in Michigan, which I was like, oh, what a small world. I almost ended up in a commercial because I started talking to some strangers next to me on a park bench, and it just so happens that one of them was dating the production assistant who was working on a shoot on the other side of the park, which I know isn't only a New York story, but I will forever remember that experience. My dad still has a Maybelline hat because of that experience. And wherever you're at, just remember that there are people in your life, whether you realize it or not, that care about you. And while you may be physically alone in this moment, while watching this more than likely, that doesn't mean you're actually alone. And more importantly, even if you do feel alone, it doesn't have to stay that way. There are plenty of options. And the only way to expand your comfort zone is to step outside of it a little bit. And, you know, these little things that I mention might sound like baby steps, but the beautiful thing about baby steps is they feel really small and insignificant in the moment, but then eventually you take a look back and you realize just how far you've come.